When I am in need of special motivation to leverage myself to greater accomplishment, I often turn to records in the Scriptures that seem to inspire me and seem to never grow old. Could I use one for you as an example tonight? The story of Joseph in Egypt. Imagine you are in Joseph's shoes and find yourself in this situation. We read the remarkable story about this family that had the large number of boys. One of the sons, Joseph, was loved by his father more than his other brothers. To show his love to his son, the father made him a coat of many colors. And the Scripture records, and when his brethren saw that his father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. Now, Joseph didn't make matters any better. He used to have dreams. Can you imagine coming to the breakfast table and telling your brethren something like this? He said to his brothers, "Hear, I pray you, this dream I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose, and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about, and made obeisance to my sheaf." His brethren said unto him, "Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us?" And they hated him yet even more because of his dream. Now, to complicate the process, the father allowed Joseph to stay home, sent his brethren out in the field to tend the flocks, and every now and then would say to Joseph, "Go out and check up on your brothers." One day they saw him coming from afar, and they felt as if they could stand their brother no longer, and they conspired to slay him. They conceived a plan that would kill him, and tell their father that some wild beast had devoured their brother. But one had compassion on their brother, and did not want the blood of his brother on his hands. He persuaded his brother to cast Joseph into a pit. Then they would not be responsible for his death. Then another brother, who was a great merchant, evidently, said, "What profit is it for us to slay our brother, conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him. For he is our brother and our flesh." And his brethren were content. So they sold their 17-year-old brother to a caravan on their way to Egypt, so that he would be sold as a slave. In a strange land with a strange tongue that had strange customs. Out of this comfortable home and environment that had been associated with. Now, that would almost destroy the spirit of any young man. But not Joseph. He seemed to never be discouraged. He thought, if I have to be a slave, I'll be the best slave there is. And his countenance radiated a special spirit. When he was offered for sale, he was purchased by the captain of the king's guard. It was only a short time before Joseph had so distinguished himself to the captain of the guard that he made him ruler over his whole house. In authority, he was the first servant, and he was made overseer over all the captain had. And the captain put his complete trust, his property, his income, in the hands of Joseph. Now, Joseph was a goodly person and achieved the position of prominence through the help of the Lord. But his troubles were only beginning. This handsome young man attracted the wife of the captain of the guard. One day when he was working alone in the house, she heard him, came in, put her hand on his garment. Joseph, being a righteous man, knew that this was no place for him, and he loosed himself from his garment and fled, left the wife holding Joseph's garment in her hand. Can you imagine what that would do to a woman? And the Scriptures record, and he got him out. You see, he fled from temptation. He knew when he was in the wrong place. Now when her husband returned, she told a terrible story about Joseph, And the captain was so angry, he had him cast into prison. Now, not only being separated from your family, being a slave in this strange land, he found himself this time in prison. I can just imagine what the prisons were like in Egypt in that day. They probably were not a very delightful place to spend time. But Joseph, again, not being easily discouraged, he set about to become the best prisoner in all the prison. And soon he gained favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Again, the scriptures record, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. Now he was the chief prisoner in the prison. He tried to seize on every opportunity to advance his growth and development. Cast into the prison shortly after Joseph were two of the king's officers, the chief butler and chief baker. Joseph soon became acquainted with them. They both had dreams. Because Joseph was a righteous man, he interpreted their dreams. To one he said, "You will not get out of prison, but lose your life here." To the other he said, "You will soon have the opportunity of returning to your former position of honor with the Pharaoh." Then he said to the one who would be returned to the Pharaoh, to his former position, "Please remember me to the Pharaoh. I'm tired of this prison life. I want to be released." The chief butler was restored to his position of prominence, forgot all about Joseph for 2 years. Then one day the king had a dream, which none of the wise men could interpret. Then the chief butler remembered Joseph, and he went to the king and said, "There's a man in prison who can interpret your dream." The Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and Joseph, under the inspiration of the Lord, interpreted the king's dream. The king, the Pharaoh, was so impressed with Joseph that he was released from prison and made a servant, serving him. So Joseph again distinguished himself, so much as a servant of the Pharaoh, that he soon became chief among all the servants. In fact, became second in all the land of Egypt, second only to the Pharaoh himself. He turned every situation he encountered in life into an opportunity for growth. Because of the service of Joseph rendered, the Pharaoh said unto the other servants, "Can we find such a one as this? A man in whom the Spirit of God is." And the Pharaoh recognized that Joseph was indeed directed by the Lord when he said unto him, "For inasmuch as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art." Do you see what happened to Joseph when he was faced with difficult problems? He leveraged every opportunity to take advantage of it, to place him in a position where he could grow, progress, and achieve.